Good morning and welcome. I'm Carol King, and on behalf of the staff at ODE and Randa Solutions, we welcome you to the first of a series of webinars for the Ohio Electronic Teacher and Principal Evaluation System, eTPES. Next Thursday, September 20th at 1 o'clock, we will host a second webinar for principals. On September 27th at 4 o'clock, we will host a third webinar for teachers. We're pleased that you could join us today, and we hope that the information provided will be helpful to you in using eTPES. We have had over 300 superintendents log into eTPES, and we've had over 680 people view the eTPES demo on YouTube. Our panel today includes Marcus Roberto, IT Managed Project Manager for eTPES, Kathy Harper, Director of the Office of Equity and Talent, Andy Salmon, On-Site Project Manager for Randa. And together, we will answer questions you may have at the conclusion of this presentation. Our presenters today from Randa Solutions are Dr. Rod Berger, Vice President of Education, and Dallas Dover, Project Manager of Software Development. We are ready to begin, so I will turn it over to Dr. Berger, and he will cover the key points in the webinar today. Dallas Dover will then walk you through the software demonstration. Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Carol. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Randa Solutions and working with Dallas Dover, your project manager, who we will introduce in a few moments, to go through the key steps as Carol said. A few points for house cleaning as we get started. The password for the webinar is case sensitive, so if you've dialed in and you're having trouble logging in and seeing my screen, please note that it is lowercase e, capital T, capital P as in Peter, capital E, capital S as in Sam as a password to log into the WebEx so that you can view our screen. The other components we will talk about during these key points, but please note that we ask that you follow along in the webinar, and please do not complete your registration, if you will, or launching of your system's choices during this webinar, as we will provide you a video of this webinar so that you can go back at your leisure to complete it at your own time and in your own environment. And we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with this system, so that's why we'd like to go through this systematically. And at the very end of this webinar, we will provide a Q&A where we will be able to answer as many of the questions that you post today during the webinar using a chat feature, which I will go over prior to Dallas's demonstration of the setup wizard. So we'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But let's go ahead and get started with our key points to remember today during the webinar. Number one key point, please do not share your password for the eTPES system with anyone. Obviously, this is something that we want to make sure is secure, and so we ask with your cooperation for this. eTPES tech support and ODE staff will never request your password info. I also note at the very end of these key points we will also pass along contact points for you in the event that you have an issue, whether it's a policy question or a technical issue. So we will provide you with those contact information in just a moment. Staff roster data was provided by ODE from the latest EMIS data, assignment data closed period, which was June 2011. It's key to note that when October 11 and June 2012 EMIS assignment data is in closed status, the eTPES will be updated. Staff roster changes by LEAs in the eTPES since September 4th of this year will not be overwritten. Dallas will go into more detail of this during the setup wizard and any questions that you might have. Initial access, and this is important, into eTPES is limited to superintendents and designees through the OEDS-R registration. This approach enables LEA superintendents to determine the type of eTPES deployment preferred and the deployment schedule for your specific LEA. If you have questions regarding this access, we've got a web address that you can then select and view to get more information on this. We will also show you a screenshot of where you'll need to go to get this information so that you're comfortable with it when you see that on the screen. All right, let's go to another key point. A staff state ID assigned from ODE is required for access to eTPES for all users. If you have potential eTPES users in your LEA who do not currently have a staff state ID, please ask them to request one online. Useful eTPES information and instructions are located at the website we have here below, and once again you will have access to this in a video format, so you'll be able to then launch that link, and we'll provide also an FAQ as well with this information. And here's a screenshot of what you'll be looking at in on the web regarding your information within the system. Staff state IDs, OEDs are superintendent and designee, and educator licensure data is routinely updated from ODE to eTPES. And the superintendent and designee must complete the district setup, and principals must complete the building setup if they want to use eTPES for manual entry of ratings. We will go into this in more detail during the setup wizard with Dallas. For districts who are manually entering the performance ratings, the student growth measures data must be entered in order for the system to calculate the final summative rating. Now, these are the two email addresses that I think are going to be important for you moving forward. If you have questions regarding policy and process, please submit those to evaluation@education.ohio.gov. For technical support and questions, please email at support@ohiotpes.com. And once again, we'll review this at the end of the webinar so that you have this information. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Dallas, who's going to go through the setup wizard.
All right, good morning, everyone. So as Carol and Rod introduced, we're going to go through the software progress to date. We've been working closely with ODE since November last year, and we've done a series of pilot tests with a set of principals and teachers to use the OTES and OPES models, respectively, and to get some of the framework pieces that are now put into an electronic web-based solution tested and get some feedback. So we have been in active development since last year. One of the things that we've done as a preliminary measure is preload data from the state information system for rosters. However, that data is dated and it has a certain level of accuracy, and we're hoping that we can get your participation as leaders at the LEA level to go through and address that data as needed. If anyone's on the phone and still having issues connecting into the webinar, the password is eTPES, lowercase, followed by capital TPES. So it is case sensitive if you're having any connection issues there. All right, so we'll go ahead and get logged in here. I'm going to demonstrate an example superintendent today. Obviously, that's our focus. Again, the web address is www.ohiotpes.com, and that will be sent to you via an activation process. So, point of clarification there, once we are using the OEDS-R system to define superintendents and designees, and those accounts in that system are required, those roles are required to be enabled into the eTPES system for your LEA. So if you're having an issue with you need to delegate the setup process for the evaluation system for your district to someone else, we're advising not to share your account information or password as a superintendent to that person. We need for you to go into the OEDS-R system, set them up as a designee, and then there will be typically a 2 to 3 day maximum lead time in getting them set up in eTPES with an account activation email going out to them that will have their login capability. So that's the rollout process at this point. And again, we're discouraging sharing of account information at the superintendent level. Okay, so the first thing you're going to find as a superintendent when you log in, it's basically a wizard process. So this is the locally hosted type deployment method for each LEA. There's a series of questions here that you're going to be asked, and it's really pertaining to how you're going to implement the system that's been provided by the state. This first page does have some links for you for a short video on YouTube to go over the system and the capabilities of the system, and we're not going to really address all of those today. We'll have some follow-up webinars and materials to go out to discuss more of the evaluation specifics and the forms related to that. And there's also a hyperlink for downloading a set of PDF instructions. So if there's questions about these 6 steps that you see in this wizard, this documentation will go over the purpose and intent of that, and also allow you a chance in advance of completing these steps to sort of get your thoughts together and maybe have any discussions in your district before proceeding with those. So what you'll do is click Next to go in between the steps, and you'll see in between each of the important steps, you'll see a set of instructions and some thoughts that you might need to consider. So step 1 and 2 will talk about rubric alignment. Now this will impact both the teacher and principal evaluation setup for your district. Obviously by default the state is providing an OTES and an OPES performance rubric. If you choose to use those models as is, the process is quite simple, and we'll go through that as a use case. If you have a locally developed or modified rubric, or you're using a third-party type rubric, it's a little more complicated to set up, but there's definitely an easy way to do that in this wizard. We'll go ahead and go into that now. So under the step 1 rubric alignment, this is specific to teachers. What's going to happen here is there is a application from the American Institute of Research, AIR, is used to align a locally developed rubric to the state standard. So if you have a situation in your district where you're going to use an alternate model from OTES, you'll have a process that's linked here. You'll click on a hyperlink, and you will be able to go to an external website and complete those steps. If you're using an OTES model, or maybe a slight modification OTES, you still will need to click a hyperlink that will be presented on the screen to access the AIR alignment tool, and you'll convey that information that you're going to use the OTES model, and then you'll sign off on that. So there is still a need to declare the rubric, the teacher rubric that you're going to use for this calendar year, and that part will be returned. If there are issues with your situation as far as launching that site or anything related to completion of that process, there is support vehicles to help you through that. Again, policy related questions, we have that email address that will be followed up at the end of the webinar, as well as the technical support address. Once that AR alignment is completed, you will see a response on this screen to let you know that it is completed. The no rubric message may be seen if you've picked the OTES model as is. We will be changing that to say that you're picking the OTES model. So that's just a point of clarification in the current state that will be changed soon. On the next step, you're basically performing the same selection option for principal rubric, and there's not an external alignment tool for that. But what you're doing is declaring if you're going to use the state-provided OPES model as is, or you have a modification of that model or a locally developed model. So that's a very simple way to convey one of those two choices. And since we're not accessing an external site to sign off for that purpose, you're going to sign off on this site with your state ID. So whoever the superintendent or designee that is going through this process will use their state ID to confirm this action. So you'll simply enter that and click Next. So the next step after you've declared the rubric model that you're going to use for both teacher and principal setups, you're going to, for the 2012-2013 school year, you're going to convey a pilot or an implementation methodology for this year. This is largely based on your Race to the Top scope of work, SIG or TIF, or a voluntary choice of these options. The nice thing about this is it is tied to the teacher and principal framework separately, so you could pilot principal and then implement teacher and vice versa, or select implementation year for both. Again, this is based on TIG, SIF, or Race to the Top information primarily, but you may have another initiative that you're working on at your LEA level to make that decision. Step 4, selection of forms or reporting. And this is, I'll probably spend the most time on this morning, and this is something that will drive you to take advantage of the free software application that we're providing through the state. They're based on the model that you're selecting for both OTES or OPES or your teacher or principal models as you've chosen. There's a series of choices for how you're going to deploy this application inside your LEA. So one of the options is if you're picking the OTES or OPES models as is, we have a full suite of electronic web-based forms that basically mimic that process in an online fashion. So you will get a fully functional electronic data repository online process where you'll be able to manage all of your evaluations, all of the form completions. Teachers will be able to log in and complete self-assessments, for example. Evaluators will be able to log in and view that information except for private forms. So if there is security on each form, they'll be able to go in and enter rubric data, scores, follow up on post-conference information. So all of the package that's included in that framework will be included in an electronic form framework. So that's the option that we're encouraging if you are using OTES and OPES models directly. It's definitely a way to take advantage of tracking and management of the process. Option 2 is a slight variation of that, where we realize that if you're using an alternate model, a slight variation to a model, possibly, then you can upload PDFs to take place of these electronic forms and go ahead and supplement or the system that we provided with your maybe scanned copies of the information that you're collecting with your process. So that's an option. If you pick the OTES and OPES models directly, that's not going to be that's going to be a choice. But if you pick a different rubric, then option 1 will not be available, but option 2 and 3 will be. And there's the reason being that the all electronic forms will not apply to maybe your rubric selection. So that's part of the thought process there. Option 3 would be primarily if you'd like to use, it's either for any framework that you select, you'll have that option. But the key point there is that you will not use the day-to-day process management and not use the day-to-day forms collection for all of your staff, but you would be looking more into a summative only situation where you're uploading the performance ratings throughout the year. Maybe you're doing that once at the end of the year, and you would calculate the final summative only and then provide that information through the system. One key thing to note there is if you are using the electronic forms, either in options 1 or 2, you will be able to take advantage of some of the reports that we will provide at the district and school level to be able to see maybe some of that information aggregated together to kind of get some improvement metrics out of the system. And those reports have not been developed, but will be done so in collaboration with LEAs throughout the state. So just for this example, I'm going to go ahead and pick the electronic model. Again, to note, if you went into the AIR alignment tool and you picked to use an alternate rubric altogether, this first option will be grayed out and you will not be able to choose that. But you would be able to select the combination of electronic forms and PDF uploads or a manually entered data set, including the student growth information for the final summative. So once those selections are made, we'll click Next, and this is part of the process will be confirming the preloaded principal assignments. And again, we recognize that data may be dated for you, and you need to go in and make changes. And you may find that there's principals that aren't in your list at the start of this process, and that's okay. We have some solutions for that, and I'll go over that. The key thing to note here, as part of the local rollout process for your LEA, is that the deployment approach for each user includes a valid email address. So once we have a collected email address that's current, you can utilize the eTPES application to send their login and account activation email, and that will include their personal link into the website to get started. So it's very important that the email address be accurate and updated, especially if it's blank or missing. You're going to want to go ahead and do that by selecting each principal in the row and clicking Edit. And that will allow you to modify that data You also have an opportunity to change the school that they're assigned to in case you have some resource moves that have not been recorded in the preloaded data. In addition to, if you have, for some reason, a principal listed in your this preliminary roster that's being preloaded, if you need to exclude them because they're no longer at that position or role, then you would simply uncheck the send activation box and apply that change. And that will indicate to the software that you do not intend to send that person an email to activate their account. You will later on in the process be able to remove that individual from your district. So if you're finding that you have staff that's no longer employed or has moved around significantly and you need to make those changes, there is a full-featured roster application in the software that will be available with some changes today, as well as later on in the process we'll be making enhancements to that. So again, this screen is primarily to do a preliminary check and do preliminary adjustments, but not necessarily designed for you to make all of the changes that you might need to make. Again, this is to get launched, get started, and then let you follow up on the remainder. So once I've gone through my list of principles, and you may see multiple tabs here, multiple pages of content if you have a large district, you'll go ahead and select the checkbox that says that your principal list is accurate to the best of your knowledge, and you'll click Next. And at this point in time, once you've completed these steps 1 through 5, you'll have the opportunity to confirm that you would like to go forward with these choices, and you'll get an overview of the choices here. If you're finding that you have a mistake or you would like to make a change, you can click the return to selections to modify and go back and make adjustments. If you go back into the process far enough, you may make a change to one of the questions that impacts a later question. So if you go all the way back and you change your model for OPES or OTES, you may find that you need to reselect your form choice if it's no longer available because of a prior change. That's just a note there. Once these options have been selected, you will click the Confirm Setup link, and at that point in time it will send out emails to the principals to provide their account activation. Once the principals receive that email, they will now have the ability to create their accounts and log in. It will also create their evaluations. So if you've since we've gone ahead and made the choice of which forms and model we're going to select, once they log in, their evaluation will be ready to start, so that they will actually have the capability to start their self-assessments right away. So it is a advancement in the process for your LEA once you've made that finalization step. Once the principals log in, just a note, they will have the same type of wizard that you just experienced here, but it will be focused on verifying your teachers within your building. So that actually will allow them to take a similar step that you took with the principals and pre-select or pre-check those teachers and go ahead and get those accounts launched in a very similar fashion. Once I've completed, as a superintendent or designee, if either of those individuals in an LEA has completed the process, once you log in as either of those individuals, you'll now be in a situation of this dashboard or homepage. So at that point, you've essentially finished that wizard, and you will not see that again for this year. And that will intent is to have that be an annual process at the first of each academic year. You will have that type of wizard and deployment process so that you can schedule your rollout for your district. So the idea there being that once that is complete, you will have a fully functional interface and dashboard to work with and go forward. For today's purposes and with time constraints, we're going to cover some of the administration features. We're not going to go into evaluation specifics of how you would observe and evaluate principals and teachers, and that will be a follow-up webinar. And what we want to cover now is the administration features that you might need to use very quickly in the process, which includes user account management. So we mentioned that the wizard process provided a preliminary principal rostering feature for you to do an early check and a preliminary check and change list there, and basically to get the principal started in the process. But if you're finding that you need to go in and have additional changes for principals and teachers and other staff in your district, you're going to have that capability in the administration and then the manage users section. So once that is loaded, you'll have a page listing of users in your district. You'll have the ability to see which location or school building they're in, again, with different roles, and these will typically say principal, teacher, staff, general staff, superintendent, superintendent designee. Note that there is security applied to this, so if you're at the district level, you will see all staff, but if you're at a school building, you'll see only staff at that school building and below. So principals will also have access to this same type of user roster management, but it will only be within their building. So to access one of the accounts within that screen, you simply click on that record, and it will load that individual's information. You'll have the ability to move their building. If there is an issue with the school assignment, you can change that and save it. You will have the ability to correct names. We definitely realize that folks have marriages and other issues where their last name may change or they go by a different first name. You can change those for the system purposes. But the key note here is that we're basing all user activity and data around their state ID. So it's very key to note that that cannot be modified. We're also intending to not allow you to modify the state ID based on a change to an individual. If that's changed in the state system, we'll have to coordinate that change from the state system into the eTPES product to coordinate those state ID changes. So if there's ever a change to that, that's how that'll be done. In addition, it's not advisable to change the purposes of an account that already exists in case you're missing an account. If you have a new hire, a new staff position within your LEA or school, you will need to use an add user feature, and that will be based on state ID that's been assigned to that person, rather than repurposing a state ID that might have been used for a prior employee that's no longer employed in your district. We would need to remove that user from your district that had the prior state ID and then instead of repurposing that user account. So it's key to note that the data that's being reported throughout the system is tied to the state ID, much like a social security number might be tied to you as a income tax return. So it is important to not try to work around the state ID assignments. From that point, a few things to point out. You have the ability to search by location, last name, or state ID in the rostering utility. If I'm creating a new user, I will be able to use the state ID to search for that user that might already be in the system. That's highly encouraged. This screen is going through a revision currently to allow you to search for existing users in the state by state ID, and that might be useful to use the state software applications to find that particular teacher, principal, or other staff person prior to coming into eTPES and looking for that particular state ID. So we're definitely going to coordinate those databases and those systems to make this as easy as possible. One of the things with a release that's upcoming will be the ability to specify that an individual is no longer within your district or no longer within your school, and you'll be able to take that person and reassign them into a state designated set of or location such that other districts or schools may take ownership of that particular educator or staff person as appropriate. So there will be an opportunity to do that and clean up your rosters even further. And it is encouraged that you do that so that any other LEA in the state can claim ownership or staffing of that particular individual. Another key thing to note, we do have a little time left, is the evaluator assignment. We will pre-populate the primary evaluator for each educator that's being evaluated, both principals and teachers. For principals, that will be assigned to the superintendent of that LEA. For teachers, that will be the principal of their current school building at the time their account is activated. So we're going ahead and preloading this information, and you'll have the ability to modify that both in this administration screen. You'll be able to modify multiple teachers or multiple principals at once and change their primary evaluator. So if you want to delegate that to a district staff evaluator or an assistant principal, for example, at the school level, you'll be able to make those changes for each teacher. The important thing to note, the primary evaluator will be notified, especially when using the provided eTPES online forms. That will give that person the capability to receive emails on completion of forms, as well as any other notifications related to that evaluation. It also assigns responsibility to that person to complete their final summative as the evaluator. That person will have responsibility for completing that final summative, the final ratings, and the sign-off associated with that. So that's what the primary evaluator will do. Again, there will be more specific content, webinars, and videos related to assigning of that and the features related to that. But that's just an overview, and that's the current administration features that we have available to you. Also want to note the help menu. There is a frequently asked questions document that's available to you, linked to the state site. That will include common questions related to login, to OEDSR, to certain policy questions that are being asked frequently. We have our support contact information for policy questions available right here on the screen on the help page, as well as the support technical questions, support email address, as well as a phone number there for you to contact us. We have a set of user guides and resources related to teacher and principal evaluation systems available, so you can browse that as needed. On the dashboard, we also have quick links to this information for all users to see as soon as they log in. We have an announcements area, so if when the state or the software vendor needs to make announcements to you, there's an opportunity for us to do that, and it will show up on your dashboard. One thing to note as well, if you need to change your user settings, being that you want to change your password or be able to access what's referred to as your PIN. Your PIN number will be used to confirm certain actions in the site, especially related to evaluation forms. You'll be able to access that 4-digit PIN. That is used to indicate completion of certain activities in the site, including evaluation forms at this time. You also have a log off feature if you'd like to leave your browser session. You can simply close your browser, or you can click the log off feature. There is a set of user messages that may be loaded in the screen at the top. This will be primarily for things such as form completion by your evaluated individuals, or if you're completing forms as an educator, you will also be sending out messages as you complete those forms to other folks, and that will show up in their message list.
We are monitoring very carefully all of the questions that come in. They are going to the support staff. We are trying through our mailbox and through the staff that we have. We've been very busy answering all those questions, and we hope that we have connected people and gotten people set up in the system. So the last week, we have been responding to individuals who have had issues with logins and so on. So we will continue to do that until we feel that everyone is set up and ready to go. We will be working on the student growth measures side. That is a feature that will be added in January of 2013. We may have some questions on that. That is currently not in eTPES, but will be added as we work with our data department here to make sure that we can, that is certainly an important part of eTPES, and will be added at approximately January of 2013. We do encourage our LEAs to go ahead and work on their SLOs and work on their data for student growth measures beginning this fall. And we have a lot of our LEAs are implementing this year. So we are assuming that that work is ongoing in their district, and that they will be working on that as the year progresses. And support will be provided by ODE to help districts with that. So we know that the student growth measure side is something that is certainly an important part of this, 50% of this project, and that we are continuing to work on that, and we'll have that into the system by January. So we do have quite a few questions about SLOs and about districts that need some assistance in developing those. That we do have things on our web page that specifically address the student growth measures. On our web page, we have several sections on the landing page that one of which is for principal evaluation, one is for teacher evaluation, one is for district information, and then a section on student growth measures. So we would encourage people to go to our website. Probably easiest to type in educator evaluation. That takes you to our landing page and to sections that address each one of these parts of it. So we're hoping that people are taking a look at that. There are also monthly updates on our web page and some information about the frequently asked questions are there, and we are posting information every day as things come to us. So we are trying to be very current in keeping information on that website.